Welcome to class number 1 of our Photography for Teens course, presented by Use Love Group in partnership with Charles County Recreation and Parks. I'm so excited to have you here for our first class, which we are calling In an Instant. So, here we have a little picture that I took back in 2015 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was taking a walk and I was struck by this building here. There's actually more to this image, but this is all that would fit in our frame. And if you were in class, you know that we talked a little bit about framing, but don't worry, we're going to go through the whole thing all over again for your review and for anyone who's just joining. So, first of all, what is photography? Now, this question could be, what is photography? Just like that. It also could be, what is photography to you? Why are you involved with photography? In class, we talked about how photography is definitely a way of expressing ourselves, a way of documenting all that we have around us, or at least the parts that we think are worth documenting. But we also talked about how photography is a technology. In fact, we break down the word photography and we get photo, light, graphy, writing. So photography is literally light writing. Now, before we get into all the details of that and the rules and the technicalities and all of that kind of stuff, let's think about why you are involved in photography. What are you getting at here? Why do you do this? So maybe you want to pause and reflect. Maybe we keep on going. There's many reasons that people get involved in photography. Maybe they want to capture beauty. Maybe they want to create beauty. Maybe there's something happening in their world that they think is worth documenting. Maybe they just have an eye for it and they just want to do it. Maybe it's not that deep, or at least to them it's not that deep. There's many reasons why, but what I will say is it's great for you to be clear on why you do it, because that's going to help you tailor your practice, tailor the way that you keep it interesting for you and stay connected to your why. If you like to document because you think it's important, then make sure you keep an eye on that why as you keep going. And we talked about a really great example of how everybody has different reasons for why they get into this. So here's an unsung, and now recently people have been singing her praises quite a bit, but an unsung kind of awesome photographer in here named Miss Vivian Mayer. So Vivian Mayer shot pictures for decades and never told anybody about it. By looking at her images, we can see that it was a deeply personal practice for her. She had quite the eye as she moved about, taking documentary-style photos for the most part. And she's a great example of one thing that you can do as a photographer, which is you can study other people's work and be kind of putting yourself in the place of that person. Put yourself in the mindset of someone who's taking countless pictures, but not putting it on an Instagram, not sharing it to be caught by a brand, not seeing it from the rooftops, but just taking pictures. We can see what she's struck by. We can see what she thought was worth documenting. We can see a little bit about how she might have been perceived in her own world. And then she just scooted on back to her house or whatever she was doing after these people were like, who's this weird photographer lady? So just kind of fun to look at, that it doesn't have to be for everyone else. It could just be for you. It could just be a personal practice if that's what you're into. And the truth is, even if you are going to share with other people, it really has to be a personal practice to begin with, so that you can kind of start to develop your own eye. So we know that photography is an art form. It's a means of expressing ourselves. And it's also literally light writing. It's a technology that we use. We talked about the first known photographer, Mr. Nicephore Niepce, which I think is how you'd say his name, but please, please, please don't quote me. He's the first known photographer who took this very crude image, but to him and the people around him, I'm sure they wouldn't have said crude. They would have said amazing, magnificent, all kinds of things. So he took this image using the light that came through his window and a photosensitive plate and a material that's somewhat like asphalt. And what he did was he actually let the light burn the image onto the photosensitive plate using that asphalt to kind of burn in the imagery of the cityscape. So he's looking out at the city from his window, and this took him many, many hours for it to actually burn onto the plate. And the light is shining onto the plate, but also burning where the light is being obstructed by those buildings. Now, this crude technology is literally what photography is based on. When we were doing film photos only, we're literally using the light to imprint an image onto photosensitive materials or film, and that's how we get an image. Pretty cool. So this takes us to what our focus is today. You might be able to guess. We have our first focus is light. Light is the basis of photography. A good photographer is always aware of their light. When I say that, what I mean is you're aware of where the light is coming from, what it's bouncing off of, how that thing that it's bouncing off of is dispersing the light. You're aware of how the light beams are going all in the same direction until they hit something to redirect them. You're aware of the quality of light, how much of it you have, how hot, how warm it is, or how cool it is. You're just aware of light. A good photographer becomes super aware of light. The other thing that you're going to be very much aware of, starting from today, is exactly the framing. So a good photographer understands that they have two eyes, but their camera has just the one. Knowing that you can't capture everything, you're going to decide what is worth capturing for you. Here's an image that I took in New York a few years ago, where my eye caught this billboard and how it was poking through the trees. And by working the scene, I was able to create some lines that I thought were pretty interesting that made this maybe really normal, really run-of-the-mill scene seem more interesting to me. All right, so on top of being focused on light, good photographers are also focused on composition, because although your two eyes noticing all these incredible things all around you, that might be the impetus or the catalyst or the reason why you begin taking photos. A good photographer understands that you're not going to be able to capture everything. What you capture will fit within a frame, and therefore you're very conscious of the lines, the framing, and the sort of like pieces that are going to help you make good composition. We'll get into that. In fact, in this course, we're going to learn some of the so-called rules, which really end up being a little bit more like norms. Norms that people have noticed over time that will help you create really good images. So the human eye tends to want to see things that are symmetrical. The human eye tends to follow leading lines that are kind of telling it where to look. And there's a lot of little rules that have come about to help photographers capture images that are going to be aesthetically pleasing, balanced, interesting, harmonious, things like that. Now, I believe it's great for you to learn those rules so that you can use them to your advantage as you please, and then so you can break them creatively. The point being that you make images that you love. Now, On top of learning some of those rules and practicing them, we're also going to be studying some masterful photographers, masterminds, you might say, people who have just done a great job of developing a very particular eye, and creating images that are very, very beautiful to look at. And our very first one is the incomparable Fan Ho. Our very first photographer that we're studying is Fan Ho, and you guys, as you start to study photography, are going to hear his name come up quite a bit. He is a huge inspiration for street photographers, but also many other types of photographers and artists. When you talk about light and lines, there's nobody better than Fan Ho. Let's take an image, take a look at this first image here, where Fan Ho noticed this incredible diagonal shadow, this beautiful long line of a building. Maybe that's the most boring building anybody's ever seen, I don't know. But the way that he framed this up with the woman right there, it's awesome. It's one of his more famous images. So let's learn about who Fan Ho was. So from his own words, Fan Ho says that he was always pursuing truth, goodness, and beauty. Fan Ho was like I said, street photographer who was actually born in Shanghai in the 30s. When he was around 18 years old, he moved to Hong Kong. By this point, it was about 1949. And some of you might know that this was a time of war and coming out of war, when he's kind of in your age group and beginning to learn and get into photography. His first camera was a Kodak Brownie, that old school joint right there. And then the photographer he's known for is the one he's holding in that picture, the Rolleiflex, excuse me, the Rolleiflex, which is what he ended up using for the rest of his time as a photographer. So, all of these images that we're going to see were shot on that old school Rolleiflex. All right, so I'm going to actually just let his first picture just sit here and give you a moment to notice some of the elements that make his work so special. What do you notice? You can pause the video. All right, so, and please keep it paused if you're still taking it in, but we're moving forward. I'm noticing this great beam of light right in the center. It's hitting that center stair rail. I'm noticing these incredible lines that are creating balance with the stairs. And on top of that, he's been able to capture basically perfect symmetry. The human eye does have a tendency to like symmetry, and so he's been able to achieve that with this photo. Now, what I also noticed is that for him to take this picture, what's happening here? This seems to be a city scene, people going about their regular days. This does not, to me, feel like a rushed effort. It feels like someone who is genuinely intrigued with, curious about the world, interested in the people and what they're doing and what their lives may be. And I have to imagine that he set this up. He's shooting on film too, so he can't just shoot a bunch of pictures. He set this up and noticed that he could have a fairly symmetrical image. And then I'm guessing that that magic thing of photography might have happened here. Maybe these guys weren't perfectly symmetrical at the top at the beginning. Maybe these people who were over in the corners weren't perfectly symmetrical right there either when he first set it up. But you'll notice, especially if you start to be a little bit more of a documentarian, when you have the sort of attitude of curiosity, interest, beauty, it's weird. It's like the scene will kind of fill itself in perfectly. So you end up with this perfect imagery of the people exactly in their places, almost like he was actually shooting a movie. Fan Ho did end up becoming a director eventually too, so I can see that in his work. I'm going to slide through some more of his images. And as I do, just notice his use of light and lines. Lines can be literally the lines of the stairwell. They can also be the implied lines or leading lines, like this man carrying this load. He's looking to the right of the image, and then this woman with her baby is looking to the left of the image. So there's this like those lines kind of coming together of how they're looking, one to the right and one to the left. It creates a little bit of interest in the center of this picture. Here's another masterful one that probably should have been on its own slide. Check out those diagonal lines. Notice how the diagonals feel compared to just straight up horizontal or vertical lines. Here we have another picture of a city scene where he's used the line of the road progressively opening up as it comes down, and the little boy is walking down in that direction as well. Really, really cool use of lines. Another great use of lines. See how he's stacking those verticals and those diagonals. Really cool stuff. Masterful, masterful. I had to take this one, even though it's got the little X on it still from screenshotting it. Incredible, perfect symmetry. All these different lines playing with each other so well. And like I said, he became a director, so I wonder if that's some direction on his part. We can see a couple more of his images here. So, in his own words, Fan Ho says, "I've always believed that any work of art should stem from genuine feelings and understandings. I didn't work with any sense of purpose." I thought that was interesting. He didn't work with any sense of purpose. He does say this though, "As an artist, I was only looking to express myself." So he didn't have some particular interest. He wasn't trying to catch somebody's attention in particular. He wanted to express himself. And then from there, it says, "I did it to share my feelings with the audience. I need to be touched emotionally to come up with meaningful works. When the work resonates with the audience, it's a satisfaction that money can't buy. My purpose is simple. I try not to waste my audience's time." And then it says that he laughed after that. So when he says that he needs to be touched emotionally in order to do the work that he did, I think we can see that in the imagery here. These are working class people who have to use their bodies to get their means of survival. And it seems to me that Fan Ho had a genuine interest, intrigue, and a soft spot for these people. He cared enough about documenting their lives and what it was like for them. Here's a couple more. The softness and the magic of that regular life stuff, but through Fan Ho's eye, incredibly magical stuff. So I think the takeaway we get from Fan Ho is we can slow down, see the picture before you take it. You don't get that kind of magic from just trying to quickly get something on your camera. There has to be a genuine interest in the scene and a genuine curiosity about how to work the scene. In class, we looked at a snippet of this video by Eric Kim, who I believe is very much influenced by Fan Ho. And he talks about how to work a scene. He talks about how you're looking at the different lines, you're seeing how you can stack them up, you're adjusting your angles and things to try to capture something that you find to be interesting or beautiful within that frame that you get as a photographer. I'll have this video linked for you. And I hope that you'll have a chance to explore for yourself between now and next class how you can use light and shadows and lines to create images that you like. Now, this is something you can continue to come back to, just the basics: light, shadows, lines. How can you make imagery that you think is cool? Maybe you'll be right in line with some of those cool rules we're going to learn about, like rule of thirds and soft focus and all these great things we're going to be learning about. Maybe you'll be right in line with that. Maybe you won't. Maybe it'll be a little bit more messy. It'll be a little bit more random, like my little shadow photo here. These are all pictures that I took. But the point is, you can play with those things and create images that you think are interesting, that you like. All right, so to review, we talked about light, lines, and how that helps us to create really great compositions in our photos. For next class, we have a little preview. I'm so excited. This one's going to get interesting. We will be looking at perspective. Perspective, culture, and the incomparable photographer, Ming Smith. She's one of the OG photographers that we will be studying in class, and she actually originates from this area of the country. So she's going to be a fun one to get into. All right. So that's your preview for next class, and I'm hoping to see you all back. But until then, you have some exclusive class notes available to you. You'll have a little printout that looks just like this, says light and lines. If you use that QR code, it's going to take you exactly to the spot on the internet where this video will be housed and the rest of our content for the class. You also have a cool little activity you can get involved with here. So you have some scrap prompts here, and you can do this yourself even if you lose your little piece of paper. Write these words or whatever words you'd like onto slips of paper, put them into a cup or a hat, pull one out randomly, and have that be your photo prompt. If you pull circle, for instance, maybe you're looking for circles to take a picture of. Maybe you grab a great one of your cat's head because that's a circle. Or maybe circle is that you stand in one spot and you're taking photos as you turn around in a circle. You move your body in a circle, taking pictures. There's so many things you can do with it. So let yourself be free, but use those little prompts as good practice. All right, so until next time when we study some perspective and how we can use perspective to make really great photos. Until that time, I hope you guys have a great time shooting. And if you have any questions, you can shoot an email over. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.